And we are live. Well, things are ramping up with our cosmic neighbours. All sorts of things happen. Today on the show, Dolly Safran was going to share more of her story, but she's not feeling great today. So the wonderful Preston Dennett is going to step in for Dolly and share Dolly's story from his perspective. You're listening to Accentuate the Positive, Awakening and Expanding Consciousness with Karen Swain. We are streaming on Dolly and Preston's platforms. So I want to say hi to all his audience, because I know you guys have got a great audience, and on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio all over the place. Stay tuned. We're going to have a great show.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
G'day again. Karen Swain here, accentuating the positive. And look who's in the house, Preston. Thank you so much for filling in for Dolly. Oh, hang on. I think you're muted. Here we go. I have to unmute you. Here we go.
Yes, thank you. It's my pleasure.
We're going to still make the show all about Dolly. We're going to talk about Dolly, but it's going to be from Preston's perspective instead of Dolly's perspective, because, as I said, Dolly's not feeling so hot at the moment. But Dolly is one of the most fascinating people on the planet. So is Preston, actually, and I adore talking to both of them. But just before we start, I wanted to do this with Dolly on the show. I thought about this just before I went live, but I really wanted to honour Dolly for all that she has been doing, kind of in secret. It's only been in the last few years that she's actually been out in the public eye. And all that, you know, as the star seeds and light workers and wanderers and whatever you want to call them, elected to volunteer to be on Earth, to change the game on planet Earth. Dolly is one of them, and she has a big mission. She did it mostly in secret until you guys met, really, and you started to share her story in the book Symmetry, which we're going to talk about today, actually. And so I just wanted to really honor Dolly for everything that she's done for planet, for our galactic neighbors, but also for humanity and planet Earth. And we're going to talk about you, Dolly, so your ears are going to be burning. And thanks again, Preston, for tuning in. Look, Preston needs no introduction. We're actually streaming on Dolly and Preston's platforms as well, on the Lightgate on Facebook and their YouTube channels, as well as my YouTube channels and the United Public Radio Network channels. So you need no introduction. If you don't know who Preston is, go look him up. You'll find out all about him. But Preston, how did you first meet Dolly?
Yeah, through actually pretty unusual circumstances. It's not at all uncommon for contactees to reach out to me on a pretty much, well, perhaps not daily, but certainly weekly or monthly. I'm getting all kinds of people contacting me. And Dolly was one of them. And her initial email, I believe it was quite brief, just really requesting to chat. And of course, I said yes. I try to respond to all emails. I'm having a very difficult time for those of you who I haven't responded to yet, but I do have your emails. But I responded within 24 hours and said, sure. And we started chatting. And it's funny because she was very tight-lipped, very guarded. And I've certainly seen this sort of, approach before from contactees, because they don't know, they've been ridiculed. They've been disbelieved. It's a long, tough road being a contactee, dealing with people on Earth especially. So she was very guarded. But pretty quickly, we started talking about her experiences. But I have to tell you, it took a few months before I realized just how extensive more than that, even a year, before I realized that she is different from most of the people I've spoken to. Her story is easily the most extensive I've ever had the privilege to research. She's had more experiences than anyone I know. Overcame fear, overcame the missing time, has an ongoing relationship with these guys, ETs, which continues to the present day. So yeah, she reached out to me. And what's very cool about this, and this took a year or two for her to tell me, is that she was looking for someone to share her story with so she could basically let the world know. She basically started to hear about how UFOs were being portrayed on TV and the media, how ET contact was portrayed as a very fear-based, negative experience. And that wasn't her experience at all. Her experiences have been universally positive. And I will say most of the people I interview would probably say the same thing, though maybe not in the beginning. And that was true for Dolly. It was a very rough beginning. But she really wanted to come out and tell her story. So she starts going online looking for somebody who she feels like she can trust. And she found out what I think a lot of people find out. It's a mess out there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of researchers, and I'll put that in quotes, Karen.
Yeah.
Because they're pushing an agenda, or they're very fear-based, or they're out to make money, or get famous, or be relevant in some way. And she wasn't having any of that. She wanted her story told accurately. That was really important to her. And so she went, she contacted some very well-known researchers who didn't call her back or weren't interested or certainly weren't a good fit for one reason or another. And she almost gave up. She was exasperated. She was on board a craft talking to Talata, that's the fifth dimensional entity who actually embodies the craft that she flies, that she pilots. It says, you know what? I'd like to go out in public and tell my story, but I can't find anybody. And they said, well, here's somebody we want you to take a look at. He might be a good fit. And they actually told her my name. How cool is that? When she told me that, I'm like, what?
You're famous in the galactic realm. You are. You absolutely are. Yeah. Go see Preston. Go speak to Preston. He makes sense of all this stuff. You go on.
Yeah, it's happened before and it happened since.
Yeah.
It was really interesting because it was not long after that. And this kind of, it was hard to believe when people tell you something like this. Some lady told me this earlier, another contactee, who, by the way, is very conscious of her experiences, has had a whole bunch of them, is very much like Dolly. She said the ETs basically guided her to me. I'm like, yeah, sure they did. I was skeptical. And then Dolly says it, I'm like, gosh, maybe this is true. But this guy from England calls me. This was like right on the heels of Dolly contacting me. And he wanted to talk to me because he had a conversation with gray ETs. And they told him that nuclear power on our planet is a real problem and could very well lead to massive destruction and death and so forth. He was quite upset. Yeah, he was really upset about it and called me from England, of all places, and said, have you heard of this? Is this a thing? I'm like, well, yeah, actually it is. It's the most common message, really, that ETs will give contactees. It really is. And that's what I told him. They will say a lot, but it's usually along those lines of war and aggression and greed and corruption and destruction of the environment, but definitely the dangers of nuclear material in any capacity.
Yep.
So, he didn't want to be interviewed. I didn't ask him because it was obvious. He just wanted someone to talk to, just wanted some questions answered. So we talked for an hour, a little bit longer, and he thanked me profusely. I'm like, hey, it's an honor. It's a pleasure. I'm glad I could help. He says, one more thing before we hang up. I just want you to know that this encounter I had happened this morning. I'm like, oh, wow. Because sometimes it takes people a while, to deal with it. But no, it had happened that day. And he said, the Grays, it says it was Grays. And he said, they told me to call you. He says, I did not know you. I certainly did not know him. I, to this day, don't know his name.
Oh, wow.
But yes, so that's happened since. Now I think the Grays, ETs in general, they know all of us. And especially
Yeah.
if you're involved in the UFO field, Karen, they know you. They know all
Yeah.
the podcasters. They watch
Hello.
all of us.
Oh no, I know they know me. I speak to them. I chat to them all the time. They're great.
Yeah.
I just want to interject here because I've just been away this weekend with over 100 people from all over the world that came to meditate, to change the grid for, a new Earth, for the Stargate experience, to have more connection with our galactic family, to upgrade the consciousness of humanity. It's amazing. When I was in my 30s, Preston, I first went to a group and then I started facilitating a group that were predominantly older women. It was a small group, I have to admit, but I thought, why am I hanging out with all these old birds? Now I'm one of the old birds. But
Happy birthday, by the way.
Yeah, no, I'm even older, thanks. But,
you're welcome.
This thing that you said about the nuclear power, like that's what they said to me when I asked them, how come I'm hanging out with all these old birds? And they said, well, when you guys split the atom and created the atomic bomb, the overseeing, beings that oversee this planet, like, oh, these kids are going to kill themselves, because their technology was racing ahead, but consciousness was not. So they put out a clarion call, and many people say that Gaia put out the call. There was just a call out to the universe for highly evolved conscious beings to come and incarnate to help shift the consciousness of the planet. And they started incarnating after the war. So the baby boomers, and they predominantly came in as women because they needed to shift the paradigm of the masculine energy and raise the feminine energy. So they predominantly came in as women. I've been a man many more times than I have a woman. I always wondered, what am I doing in this female body? But, I get it. I get it. And and so when I went to the Stargate experience, there they all were, like 80% of them, 90% of them, older women. Yeah, but my age now. When I was in my 30s, they were 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Many of those people have left the planet, but they kept coming in. So, all these star seeds that have come in to like help humanity shift their consciousness so that we don't blow ourselves up with this nuclear stuff, And how do you reckon it's going, Preston? Do you think we're doing a good job? I mean, you've come in obviously in a male form, but you have a specific job to do, talking to the minds about UFOs and UAPs and research and stuff. And there's a lot of men interested in that. So I don't know why you came in as male. Maybe but holding that feminine energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we all incarnate, like you said, male, female, different ancestries, different times. But this is an unusual time here on planet Earth, with the beginning of the modern age of UFOs, 1947, 48. That is when we got the ability to basically destroy all life on this planet. And I think you're right. There was an influx of people incarnating who had a mission, who had a goal, who were probably what we would call highly evolved, or certainly spiritually evolved. And you can see this. For example, in the 1980s, there was this whole movement about near-death experiences, spearheaded largely by Raymond Moody, but it really caught fire. Everyone was talking about it. We all know about it now. It's a really important aspect because it lets us all know we are, in fact, immortal beings, which changes the way you think and deal with Earth, and reduces the fear level, because we're all living in fear of death, essentially. That's just one example of, the whole UFO movement is right on the heels of that. Which actually, it's the same time.
Well, the 60s too, with the hippie movement.
Yeah.
Everyone, peace, love, and brown rice. And the 60s exploded. That consciousness was really trying to explode in the 60s. But I don't know, something happened in the end of the 70s and the 80s to sort of dumb it down again. We became really materialistic. And then, as you say, all these NDEs came out and started talking about their experiences. And Raymond Moody put it all in a book, which allowed other people to say, oh, I can talk about this publicly because they have. And you've done that with your millions of books. You've put experiences in people's experiences in your books. And it's allowed other people to say, oh, I'm not alone in this. I can talk about this. And it's just expanded. You're doing
environmentalism is another thing that really became very popular, which wasn't a thing, back before the industrial age. No one really thought about that at all.
Yeah.
But these are ideas now that we are all very hyper aware of.
Yeah.
And the ETs
absolutely.
are saying it over and over again. They're trying so hard to wake us up. And this is, we're working on Symmetry too, Dolly and I. And basically it's going to continue where her story left off, filling in some of the gaps of some of her amazing experiences. Because let's face it, it's a lifetime of experiences, and you can't fit that in 200 or 300 pages.
Absolutely.
So she would do interviews, and I'd be like, Dolly, you're talking about something that you did not tell me. I would have put this in the book. She's like, well, sorry, there's a lot. So we're kind of adding some really interesting experiences she's had that weren't in the first book, but really it's going to focus more on the knowledge from the ETs, knowledge of how to raise your awareness, increase your consciousness, develop your psychic abilities.
Yeah, develop your psychic. I just want to there's a few things going on. You've got an amazing audience. I don't know, the chat's going off, but Nicole says it's Dolly in the chat. No, she's not, is she? Because she's not well, so she's not in the chat. This show is actually all about Dolly. She was supposed to be on the video, on the radio, but she's not well, so she's not in the chat. A couple of things that there's so many coming, but somebody said they want to know what the blue thing is in the background, and another person asked, are all aliens vegans? Some interesting questions, but we will get back to those questions, so hang on to those questions. Will you remember those questions?
What's the blue thing in the background? All right.
What's the blue thing in the background? in the Preston's background. Yeah, you got like a blue round thing in the background. Yeah, you want to answer that?
Sure, that is actually a little duck pond, like a little baby pool. The neighbors gave it to us, so we thought we might be able to use it. It's a bird bath, little duck pond type thing. A little kiddie pool, you might say.
And for the birds. Oh, that's so cute. But getting back to Dolly, so the ETs introduced you to Dolly and to share her story, and then what happened?
Oh gosh, well, this began my whole process of vetting her story. Mm-hmm. And she was very guarded. Even when we did the interviews, when I told her, like, your story is for real, I'd love to write about it. She said, okay. And I did a chapter in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters, my most popular book so far. And even then, I had no idea quite how extensive her experiences were. And we didn't even really get to her onboard experiences. Her chapter was really interesting, don't get me wrong. It sort of covered her awakening at age 14. But yeah, for the first year or two, it was basically trying to pull teeth to get her to be okay with sharing details of her story. Yeah. There was many times I would stop the interview. I'm like, listen, you're starting to talk in third person. Like I'd say, okay, describe what happened. She says, well, you go onto a craft and you do this and you do that. I'm like, no, stop right there. I didn't do this. You did it. Use the word I.
Yeah.
And she would apologize and says, you don't understand, Preston. I've spent a lifetime of keeping quiet. Yeah. It's very hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I spent quite a long time trying to just get her comfortable talking about her experiences. She is now, so it's really exciting. But I had to vet her story. I had to.
She's very comfortable now, and she's very boisterous and out there and opinionated, and it's fabulous. It's fabulous. But Preston would talk about her, and I think you had a pseudonym name for her, and I would quiz him like, who is this person? I want to get her on the show. And it's like, no, she doesn't want to come on the show. But then she agreed to come on the show, and she was so nervous that the two of you turned up together because she didn't want to come on by herself. And that was the first show I did with Dolly, with the two of you. Yeah, which was really cute. Let me just see if I can share my screen. But keep going, and I'm just going to share this. Here we go.
Yeah, well, she started explaining how, she learned how to pilot the craft and had been healed, and they'd warned her of all these things and taught her so much and took her to the other planet. It was a lot. So I really spent a long time having her go over and over details to see if her story would change, because there are ways to spot if someone is not being truthful. was apparent to me from the beginning she was, because she fits the pattern I see in so many people who are very, like I said, guarded. I'm like, you're going to have to open up your life to me. And I know this is an uncomfortable process, but if you want your story told accurately, I do need to record it. And she agreed to that. And I started talking to people she knew in her family, her friends, her coworkers, this sort of thing. And they verified her story. Absolutely. And she's like, when I first started talking to her, she didn't have a whole lot of photographic evidence. I'm like, it would be nice if you could get some. And she's like, well, they're very shy about this. And she asked them, and they started providing some amazing photographic evidence, film evidence, video evidence. She opened up her medical records to me, which is not easy for anybody to do. So I really spent quite some time just making sure, like, she's not mentally ill, she's not lying, she's not after money.
Right.
She's not gotten one single dime out of any of this, just so people know. She did not, quote, sell her story to me. I do not do that. If someone says, oh, I'll let you interview me if you give me $500. No, I'm not interested in that. I'm not in this for the money. I'm not in this for fame. There's really not a whole lot of money in it anyway. And if you think you're going to get famous, well, you're much more likely to get ridiculed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I spent quite some time just vetting her story. And she passed in flying colors. I mean, I don't know if people realize this, but she's very accomplished. She had, the early jobs. She was a limo driver at one point in college, a manager of a Wendy's, but a manager, which is kind of a big deal. But a lifeguard, a school bus driver, a zookeeper, and really a registered nurse, which is amazing because, that takes education. That takes a lot of guts to do that. You're on the front lines in the medical industry. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But she was also worked for the Department of Defense. It's a big deal. And, was involved in events that she's not even allowed to talk about.
Right. So
her resume is sterling.
Well, hopefully those things that she's not allowed to talk about, she'll tell you and you can get it down. And maybe when we are allowed to talk about, they'll come out. What do you think? Not
likely.
Really?
She obeys her NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. There's no sense. I'm like, no, I don't want to, don't break the law on my account. I've talked to people who are, do have secret clearances, top secret or what have you. Mm-hmm, and they're very tight-lipped, and I would never push for them to tell me, what.
But don't you think as disclosure rolls out that will change? Because there are people coming out saying things that they were not supposed to say. And a lot of people on their deathbed, like there have been people that have worked in the governments that have kept tight-lipped all their life, and they know they're going to die, so they know they can't be killed for saying it, and they spill the beans before, and then they cark it. Like, so things are changing.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of those. I hope so. Honestly, it's a sticky situation. It's a real hot potato. And I have sympathy for, to some extent, for the intelligence agencies who kind of painted themselves into a corner with this and adopted a policy of secrecy, which I think is a huge mistake. Secrecy breeds fear. Secrecy breeds conspiracies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's not a good idea. Truth and transparency is almost always the right decision. And they did not choose that path. So woe to them, because karma is real. And at some point, lies will catch up with you. And what I love about truth is you can alter it. You can hide it. You can ignore it. You can absolutely do all kinds of things to it, but you cannot destroy it. It's indestructible. Truth is truth.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just having a chat with the mob, the galactic mob. And I'm saying when we all move into a more telepathic society, you won't be able to hide anything. And then, what they just said to me, Preston? They said, well, actually, you could project a story and image that you've made up, or a story and an image that you want someone to believe or to receive as a download, as a telepathic download, that is not the truth. And I said, really? Just then. And I said, well, then how did the telepathic, how when you're telepathic do you know the difference between something that's given to you that's truth or not truth? Because that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, that's kind of why lie detectors aren't allowed in court, because someone can tell a lie and believe it.
Right.
Well, I think it's along those lines. But honestly, if we were a telepathic society, I don't think that we would be dealing with all the greed and the corruption that we're in the divisiveness of wealth or the unequal distribution of wealth and the divisiveness in politics and so forth. It would solve so many of our issues. And what you said is so true. Yes, we've developed technologically, but it's our morality, it's our ethics, it's our spirituality, it's our psychic abilities that are lagging behind. And that's what's causing us so much grief, so many problems. And disclosure will come sooner or later, one way or another.
Disclosure's here, I reckon. But what they're telling me about that question, like how do you know, even when you're telepathic and someone's projecting a download that they want you to believe that's not the truth, how do you know? And they said, well, the quality of frequency. And they're showing me my gut. You know how we say we get a gut feeling? Like you might believe something intellectually, but you got a gut knowing. They're saying the quality of frequency you can discern whether it's real or not. It's the quality of frequency, and you can feel it. And they're activating my gut. What do you call it? The sacral chakra. Yeah. So interesting.
When you have an out-of-body experience, sometimes you'll see projections of people, and you can tell because of the quality of their presence. You can just tell when it's a real person because there's something about it. And I think truth has that same sort of feeling.
Yeah.
People recognize truth when they really are drawn to it.
Yeah.
And if there's any doubt, there's probably a problem there because truth is easy to sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they said the same way you discern whether somebody's lying without being telepathic, you feel it. Yeah. But, getting back to Dolly, because I want to make this all about Dolly. Dolly. I could speak to you all day because you're one of the most fascinating people I know. But anyway, one of the first things that really got my attention, and I want you to share, the experiences you had with Dolly, was you were sharing that you had left your body and you were floating around in your astral form and you went over to see a friend and she was still in her physical form. This is before Dolly was out. And she was on the phone and she could see you. She could see you through her physical eyes, you floating around the room as an orb in your astral form. And she's like, I can't talk now, I'm on the phone or something. And you could have a conversation telepathically while she was having a telephone. And I'm like, wow, that person has some abilities. If she can see you and recognize you as an energy being. So do you want to share that with us and other experiences you've had with Dolly? And thanks, everybody, for your questions. And if you spot any questions that you want to answer, Preston, please do so. Lots of people saying hello.
All right. For those who aren't aware, I've gotten pretty good at having out-of-body experiences, astral projection. But it's frustrating because you go to visit people and they can't see you. You're like a ghost. It's frustrating. And I've tried many times. And on a whim, I'm talking to Dolly. She's described some of her own out-of-body experiences. And I'm like, wow, she's darn good at this. She's better than me. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to go try and visit her. On a whim, I just did it. I'm in California. She's in Florida at the time. And I pop out of my body because there's a certain, you get this feeling of the vibratory state and boom, you're out. You have a plan. So I'm like, okay, now I go to see Dolly. And once you've kind of tuned in on someone's energy, once you know them, it's pretty easy to go find them. And that's what I did. And boom, like in a snap of the fingers, I was there, coming in for a landing in this room. And it's dark, and there's a man sitting on a lawn chair in the center of the room. I'm like, well, that's odd. This is not Dolly. This is an old man who looks quite gruff. And I'm like, hey, I'm Preston. What's your name? He's like, my name is Norm. I think that's what it was. And I'm like, oh, I'm looking for Dolly. Do you know where she is? And he pointed to the door. He's still kind of grumbling a little bit. And that's when the door opened. And in walks Dolly. And she's on the cell phone. And I'm thinking, well, gosh, it's late at night. What would she be doing up at this hour? This is crazy. And she whirls around and looks at me. I see her hair go whoosh, and her eyes go wide. And she speaks to me out loud. Says, I can't talk now. I'm being robbed. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And that, strong emotion will pull you right back into your body. And it did. I was boom, right back. And I woke up the next morning thinking, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to talk to Dolly and see if she remembers this, because she looked like she was awake in the physical body.
Yeah.
And she calls me up because we're talking daily. We've become very good friends. And I'm also doing the interviews for Symmetry. And she's just talking like everything's normal. I'm like, well, gosh, she didn't get robbed. She must not have seen me, because that would be the first thing out of my mouth. And it was just a minute or two in the conversation. She's like, oh, you came over to my house last night. I saw you. I'm like, you did? What did I look like? She says, oh, well, you looked all young. You looked great. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's, when I'm out of body, I look much younger. And I said, what did you say? Because I heard you say something to me. I said, you were on the phone, weren't you? And she says, yes, I was. I'm like, what did you say? Because I heard, you said something to me. And she says, oh, well, I walked into the garage there and turned around, and there you were. And it really surprised me. And I said, I can't talk now. I'm on the phone with Rob. It was just pretty close to what I heard. Close enough. He had just received a call from a guy who had lost a loved one, and she was basically giving a reading to him. So I had interrupted that. And that's why she was up in the middle of the night. Yeah, it was amazing. She saw me.
So she didn't see you as an energy orb. She saw you in your astral form, like a physical form, but astral, looking younger with hair.
With hair.
You said you've got hair when you're in your astral form. And buff.
Oh, yeah.
That's hilarious.
I worked out when I was a young man. I was pretty muscular.
That's so funny. Yeah, and I'm skinny when I'm in my astral form.
It's nice, isn't it? You can fly around. You look great.
Oh,
but it was so funny, because it was not even 2 weeks. It was about a week later. I'm lying in bed. It's the middle of the night. And I value my sleep because, I was working full time, doing writing as well, driving 2 hours a day to get back and forth from work. It's exhausting. And I value my sleep. But suddenly I'm waking up because my room is filled with light. I'm like, what's going on here? And finally I pull myself awake, and the room is definitely filled with light, but it's not normal light. It's not a light bulb light. It's orange, golden. It's golden light. It's this golden, sparkly light. I instantly turn to the source of it, and it's Dolly. And she's like standing next to my bed, leaning slightly over, looking down at me and smiling. And I could see her aura flashing out. It was pure gold. It was amazing. She says, my aura is more blue. But hers is gold. It was beautiful.
Yeah, gold is unusual because I see orbs around me all the time, and the gold ones are unusual. One of the times I saw a gold one, it was a fairy. My next door neighbor, who's a great gardener, walked in, and a little tiny gold orb followed her in, and it had a tail. And I'm like, whoa, who's that? And it was like the fairy kingdom. But yeah, I had a friend who died recently, who was channeled the angels, and she turned up as a gold orb. I can't see what you can see when I'm in my physical form. I can't see the astral form. I just see the orbs. But she turned up as a gold orb too. Yeah, gold. Yeah.
I've turned myself into an orb a couple of times, but normally I'm just in my physical body. I actually dress up in work clothes when I'm out of body. I look down. Someone asked me, are you dressed? like, I don't even know. So I had to look.
Naked.
And yeah, I wear my shoes and a button-down shirt. It's insane. But it was so cool because right after that, I'm like, okay, here's someone who can do this. I can see her. She can see me. I wonder if we could have a shared out-of-body experience. And yep, I'm out of body. And she appears in my room. She says, I've got something to show you. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, you're going to love it. And I think she grabbed me physically by the hand. And when you're both in astral form, it still feels physical. I mean, you can touch a person. And she grabbed me by the hand and off we went real fast. And boom, we are in the outer solar system. Have you heard of the Kuiper belt, the asteroid belt?
Yeah.
Well, that's where she took me. And I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite that beautiful, or that different, I should say, because it was about 1,000 to 10,000 asteroids, some quite close, but they stretched off in this beautiful, ecliptic sort of, if you know what I mean, like a floating beach of asteroids of all different sizes. And some quite bright, others not so bright. But really pretty. And I'm looking at them, and it's just a sense of vastness. And you're a tiny little speck in this vast, vast field of asteroids. And it's, of course, three-dimensional, because some are higher and some are lower, but mostly on this one level plane. And instantly my eyes were drawn to one which was different, and it was a golden ball, very smooth. And that was basically it. That's all I really remembered. And woke up the next morning and called her and started talking about it. She's like, do you remember? I'm like, of course I remember. It was the coolest thing. She says, what did you see? I'm like, well, I described what I saw. She said, did you see anything else? I'm like, well, yeah, one of them looked different. What was that? She says, what do you mean looked different? I'm like, well, it was all smooth. It didn't look natural. It looked like it was man-made. She said, there's your answer. This was basically an ET base.
Wow. So it looked like a planet.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you how big it was because it was quite off in the distance. But it was huge. It was absolutely huge. I don't know if it was planet-sized. It may have been.
Yeah.
I would have to ask Dolly about that. I don't think I ever asked her that. So that was one cool experience. And there were others. I mean, we've had quite a few.
So when you pop out of your physical form, because we all do it every night, do you guys hang out together, or do you do your own thing, or do you often hang out together and do things together in your astral form, or do you not and wake up in the morning and talk to each other about, like, I did this last night, I did that last night, I was there, I was here? Like, how does all that work?
It's more often we're doing our own thing.
Right.
But occasionally, yeah. One of, 'cause I'm not quite as good as it. I'll do it once a week, maybe, 5 times a month. On a good month, 10. But often what I'll do is I'll be in my room and I'll run into Dolly's room to see if she's there. And sometimes she's not. She's just not there. And sometimes she's awake and she's sitting in bed or in the living room because she doesn't sleep a whole lot. And she still sees me. It's really interesting. But sometimes, yeah, she's there and I'm there and I'm walking around. And there's other people sometimes, because when you're in the astral plane, there's people wandering around, and she's kind of a medium. And people are attracted to that, spirits. So it's become a little bit of a problem. There are spirits in our house all the time.
Yeah.
And
you're a bit of a portal, I think, for lost souls, people that have maybe left their physical form or even their astral traveling, and they see the light of your dwelling. And they're like, oh, let me go over there. Yeah. Diane says, hello, Preston and Karen, and she hopes Dolly's feeling better. Yeah, thanks, darling one. Sorry, there's lots of, I just want to acknowledge all these amazing people online with your questions. And as I say, if you spot anything you want to answer, Preston, go for it. We're talking all about Dolly. Oh, do a station call. We're talking all about Dolly Safran today. Dolly is not well. She was due to be on the show, but Preston has stepped in. And you're listening to Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network, ATP-Media, which stands for Accentuate the Positive, and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio all over the place. We are also streaming on the Lightgate, on Preston and Dolly's Lightgate on Facebook, and Preston and Dolly's YouTube channel. So we've got a huge audience, as well as my YouTube channel and Facebook pages and the UFO Paranormal channels. So yeah, we've got a great audience today. But it's Dolly, 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 all about Dolly today. She's an extraordinary light worker, starseed, wanderer, ET in human form, whatever you want to call that. Many names for it, as many of us are, I suspect. So are you, Preston, here to help uplift the consciousness of the planet by sharing who they are and what is possible for humanity and what is possible for us when we expand our consciousness and expand our psychic and telepathic abilities and feel more love and light and less division, and hatred and resentment, all that good stuff that humans do. It's all about raising your frequency. When you feel good, you regain your power to do all these things with intention and focus. Like you in your astral form, Preston, having these out-of-body experiences, astral projections as they're called, or having the conscious memory of what you get up to when you're experiencing not being in a physical body, let me say, because I know that you said that it's more the opposite. It's more like we're projecting into the body rather than projecting out, right?
Exactly.
So astral projection is not like you're projecting out of your body. You're just having conscious awareness of who you are when you're not in your body. Right.
Precisely. Yeah. The other side is our true home. That's where we came from. That's where we're going. This is a temporary, it's a little ship you fly around. Is one way of looking at it. It's a pair of clothes you put on for an adventure. Yeah. It's a little spacesuit to reach down into the third dimension.
Yeah.
I think that would be the best way of looking at it, honestly.
Yeah. When I was 23 and I was studying to be a naturopath, we had some extracurricular classes, guest people, and there was a woman that came to speak about her NDE. And it was the first time, I think I was 23, the first time I'd heard about a near-death experience. She was an Aussie woman. Don't ask me her name. It was too many years ago to remember. But she said exactly that. She said, I died giving birth or something happened. She was in the hospital, something traumatic. And she dropped her body as she would take off a top, a shirt or a jumper. We call them jumpers. You call them sweaters. Like you would take it off, and she said, that's how much my body meant to me when I was out of it. I just took it off, and it was just there, lying there. And I'm like, okay. And I remember thinking, wow, because we're so attached to our body being who we are. That was the first time I had that information given to me about near-death experience, and I was just blown away. Just took it off like I took off a sweater.
I love the NDE books. I think everyone should look into them. They really helped remove the fear of death for me.
Okay, Carol says, I want to ask if when we are taken on board with ET, do we still live a human lifetime, or are our lives extended? Where are you? So many questions. That's a good question. What do you think? Because you want to share your experiences on a ship as well, Preston.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, people who are contactees do get a little bit of help now and then. We all, come down to earth to choose certain lessons, and that might include illness, because we can learn a lot from the struggles we face on this planet. But a lot of contactees I've spoken to enjoy really good health and longevity as well. And are healed of various ailments. Certainly Dolly's experienced that. She hurt her knee real bad once, a couple of times, and they cured that. She has other conditions that they don't cure, but absolutely. And I saw another question about implants, and that speaks to that. The purpose of implants, from what I was able to understand before I met Dolly, was health related. They are to measure levels of pollution in your body, monitor your vital signs, stabilize your immune system, or something along these lines. So when Dolly came along, I'm like, what can you tell me about implants? She says, well, I have one in my hand, and she's got some x-rays and stuff to prove it. She says, this actually helps me connect to the craft when I'm piloting. She says, I've got one in my leg too, and then there was one in my ear, there's one in my nasal cavity, and these are to monitor vital signs so that they know how well she's doing at any given time. It's not for tracking, it's nothing like that. So that speaks to, contactees do get a boost in their health sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody said, where can I buy the books? So Preston's books, which are many, are all on Amazon, right, Preston?
That's right. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookstores near you, other online retailers. You can read excerpts on my website. Dolly has a website as well. She's put out a bunch of, or YouTube channel, I should say. She's put out a bunch of her video evidence, not all of it, but a good portion of it.
On your YouTube. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you can see her photographs and films of Talata. Got some really good footage. I mean, one of my favorite is this daylight footage, which is pretty rare. It's a rare contactee you'll get to any photograph. She's got a bunch of them. And one's this daylight footage. And this object is just kind of hovering there, and it stops and it moves. It's absolutely excellent footage. And some nighttime footage. And it's funny because she'll her language gets a little colorful like at times. Dolly's a military brat, But
she's got a strong personality. she elected the physical body. I think that when you're electing a physical body, you choose a whole lot of attributes that, your physical form, but also your ego form and your personality form, that you choose it according to what your soul's intention is too. And I think that if you're going to be as extraordinary as Dolly, and you really need a strength, like a real strength that, to stand up for what you believe in. You can't be sort of like a weak person,
No,
and that comes
to understand yourself, certainly.
Yeah. That comes through in Dolly's personality. She's boisterous, which is fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's on a mission to tell the truth. There's so much ignorance. There's so much confusion. There's so much fear. It's not warranted. It's not healthy. It's not helpful. And she's really trying so hard. And I think it's frustrating when you see so much ignorance around you that doesn't need to be there. So I think, she really wants so hard for people to understand, the truth.
But I think truth is relative, because there's truth from her experiences and perspective, both on planet and off planet. And then there are other people who've truth from their experiences and perspective, both on planet and off planet, and who they're interacting with, because the universe is vast and there's a lot of peeps and, mob like looking on planet Earth who are all who are interacting with many wanderers who are wearing human forms. So I think that we have to sort of allow wiggle room in what is truth. What's true for one might not be true for another. In their experience.
I don't know. I'm of the opinion that what is true, and certainly you can hold your beliefs, but all of us do kind of perceive the universe through the lens of our belief system, through our level of spiritual awareness, perhaps you might put it, and we all have to go on our own pathway towards enlightenment. So I think that's how I would put it.
Well, definitely when it comes to enlightenment, there's truth. But I'm just talking about experiences. Like, I know that Dolly has said that her mob are not here because of what the sun is doing. There is this electromagnetic radiation that is just too harmful for their ships to be in our atmosphere at the moment. So they're not here. She said that many times on different shows.
Yeah, physically.
And I asked physically, and I asked my mob about it, and they said, depends. It depends on who you are. There are some beings in the universe that have completely mastered realities, different forms of realities that know how to deal with that. And they can be here physically or as a light ship. They can be here. And I'm like, okay. And so where I was on the weekend, I was shown that there was a ship above us that was connecting to what we were doing. And then somebody was taking a photograph of cockatoos, because there was a whole lot of cockatoos in the morning squawking, and she thought that was fabulous. So she took a photograph, and in the sky was this, it was a cloudy sky, but there was this clear as day, well, you had to zoom in on the photograph. There was this light ship, white light. It's in the form of a UFO in the clouds. And I'm like, cool. Yeah. So there are some that are here. There was a photographic evidence on the weekend I saw. What do you think about that, Preston? You look a bit doubtful.
Well, I only know what I know, I only know what I've experienced. I have my beliefs about things. Knowing Dolly really well and trusting her experiences, having become a participant. I mean, I've been on the craft.
Yeah.
I trust her when she says, no, they're not here. And because I've vetted, to the extent that I could, what she's saying. And yes, our magnetic fields are down. If you look it up, it's a big problem. Yeah.
I'm not saying that what she's saying is not true, and she's not here to argue with me, but because it is true for the people that she's talking to. The people that she interacts with, the beings, are not here, but there are others that say their consciousness and technology is beyond the magnetic field, and that they can navigate it, and they are here. So just depends on who you're talking to, because there's many different forms of life at different levels of consciousness and
I can't say I don't have any recent accounts from contactees who are being taken on board.
Really?
So that kind of reflects the truth of what Dolly is saying. And if you look at MUFON and New Fork, that also says it shows a severe drop in firsthand onboard experiences.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So let's hear about your experiences going on board the ship. I'd love to hear about that. Did you go with Dolly, or did you go by yourself?
It's my understanding there was one that I shared with Dolly. I don't remember that one, but it was my birthday, which was really cool. I think this was 2021. I'd have to look it up. I did write it down. It was there about May 6th. And I'm dreaming, I'm just having a normal dream, when suddenly I'm waking up in the dream because something is happening there. I'm getting pulled, and it's a very physical feeling. And so I recognize it as being something I've experienced before. And I'm suddenly hurtling through space. Mind you, I'm wide awake at this point, and I know what's happening because I recognize the feeling. I'm being pulled on board a craft. And I recognize this from previous experiences, which are not fully conscious, but certainly remembered some of it through meditation and dreams and so forth, especially more recently. But at any rate, I'm fully conscious, and I'm hurtling through space, and it's dark, and there's stars around me, and this is going on for 10 seconds, and then 20, and then 30. I'm like, well, gosh, this is taking a long time. This is different from an out-of-body experience where you just pop from place to place or whatever. So feeling very physical, and I know what's happening. I'm like, I'm being taken. I hope I don't have to go back. Next thing I know, I am lying on a table in the center of a round room, and there are people around me. Some are quite short. I'm not focusing on them. I'm focusing on this lady who's looking down at me, who has half human, half probably what we would call gray features, but more on the human side. She had very large, very kind of slightly wraparound eyes. She was female, very small mouth, very small nose, white skin, but not, unhealthily white. Tightly curled blonde hair, very, very blonde, very tall, probably 6 feet, if not more, wearing a white jumpsuit and looking down at me saying, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yes, I'm fine." And I tried to sit up, and they gently held me down, like, no, we need to make sure you're okay. And I said, I'm fine. I'd really like to get up. And they're like, wait a second. We just, are you sure you're okay? I'm like, trust me, I am fine. And so they're like, okay, get up. And I jumped up, and I immediately looked around me, and I can see I'm in a room about the size of a house. if there were no walls. It's
Wow.
50 feet, 40 feet across, 10-foot high roof that's coming down in sort of a dome shape, a very smooth floor, grayish, if I remember correctly, and windows all around, which are slightly slanted out as kind of, how would I put it? If you were on a gondola, a blimp, you know what I mean? Or maybe, I don't know, there's no quite parallel I can think of, on a ship, I guess. But they were at a sort of a 45-degree angle, pointing with the higher end going out, and a little railing around it. And I'm like, wow, and it's space out there. I mean, it's dark space.
Yeah.
And I see this woman who is a gray, and she's 7 to 8 feet tall. I'm going to say leaning towards 7 feet tall, but a little more. And I walk up to her, and because her energy is amazing, she is graceful. This is Mama. This is Dolly's main character,
Oh, this
Mama.
is Dolly's mama. She calls Mama. Ah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm not quite clicking to that at the time, because I'm thinking, wow, look at her. This is an amazing being who is, yes, a full-on gray, but so beautiful. I mean, there's just this exquisite magnificence. What would be the grace? That would be the word I would.
Grace.
With the way she moved is just unbelievably graceful. It's like she's swimming through.
Can I ask a question about what she looked like? Does she have mammary glands? I mean, how do you know she's female?
Oh gosh, I did not really see that
Because they don't.
Yeah, she was.
Do they wear clothes?
Yeah, she was wearing a gown, a little whitish. It was a smock kind of deal, and I didn't notice if she was. I mean, she was a female. There was no doubt, but she wasn't like buxom. Did not have cleavage showing or anything like that. No, it was very tasteful, but definitely female, because there's a quality of her presence that sort of absolutely exuded that to me. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind she was female, because there were some guys on there, and I could see them as being guys, ETs.
Grays as well, and you knew they were male. Yeah.
And I walked up to her, and I was right next to her. I mean, right in front of her, looking up. I'm like, wow. And it was so cool, because she says, so, she tilts her head, and there's a tiny little smile. And I think this was probably telepathic. She says, so, is this what you thought it would be? And I said, no, it's not. It's much better.
Wow.
Because I was thrilled. And this is the most awesome experience a person can have, really. There's this absolute feeling of peace and maturity, wisdom.
Yeah.
You're in a place where no one's going to call you names. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No one's going to ridicule you. No one's going to attack you. No one's going to lie to you. These are people who are absolutely the kind of peeps I'd love to hang out with.
Yeah. What's the word? There needs to be a word for that. I'm trying to think of a word for that. I know what you mean. Advanced maturity. Maturity, I get it, but it doesn't quite cover it, because there's lots of mature people that aren't necessarily enlightened. Enlightened would be the word, wouldn't it? Enlightened, an enlightened society. Yeah.
And it was so cool, because I'm like, can I explore? And she's like, go ahead. And so, we're in the slight off center of the room, and I immediately go to the other side where there's nobody, there. And it's a fairly well-lit room. And I look out the window, and there's Earth, and it's got a curve to it. It is round. And I'm looking down, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. We must be miles and miles and miles and miles up. But it's not like, I mean, it's filling most of the viewport, looking down at least. So that was cool. And then I turn around, I'm like, wow, there's 40 people in this room.
People as in human people, or people as in gray people?
Well,
human people.
More humans than grays. So I walk up, because I'm curious, and there's 2 rows of 20-year-olds, 20 to 30-year-olds, standing in a row, 2 rows, and I walk up to one and I look at them and they're slightly entranced. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, well, that's odd. And so I walk up to this girl and I'm like, excuse me, my name's Preston. What's yours? No response.
Uh-huh.
I see a guy standing next to her. He's a black guy. And I'm about to ask him. And for some reason, I realize, this is probably not a good idea because they're not clicking to it. They're standing there, just not fully conscious.
Yeah.
Okay. So I look over, and that's when I see some other grays on the other side of the room beyond them. And my heart went, I had a slight moment of wow, not fear so much, but look at how different they are. Because these were not the tall, elegant, graceful mama type. These were shorter, real alien looking guys.
There's many people that depict the greys, and some make them look really scary and some make them look really cute. And what was your impression? Is their skin sort of wrinkly, or is it really smooth like dolphin skin?
It was smooth.
Like dolphin
smooth,
skin?
But there are, well, I wasn't that close to them, so I couldn't say, but it was gray. Yeah. And they had very large eyes that were very prominent. And that's kind of what you really notice off the bat.
Yeah.
And unusual clothes.
And they're wearing clothes. Jumpsuits.
So
Vladdy's asked a question here, which has been on the tip of my tongue for a while now. So you've read my mind, Vladdy. I had it up, what was the most impactful thing that Dolly showed or did with you or to you? Yeah, great question, Vladdy. You've read my mind. Hey?
Well, I mean, sharing her story in its entirety, it is absolutely life-changing for me because this is my mission, to understand UFOs and to help people through their experiences. I don't know if I could point to any one thing. I would say sharing some of these out-of-body adventures were huge. Yeah. Once I was in my house in Reseda in Southern California watching TV, and suddenly somebody invisible pounded on the floor right in front of me. And I'm like, whoa, what the heck? I'm looking around. Found out, Dolly says, did you, she called me up later. She's like, did you hear anything yesterday around this time? I'm like, yeah, I did. Did you hear someone pounding the floor? I'm like, yes, I did. That was me. You didn't see me. And so I decided to, make myself known. So that was cool. And what's also really cool is when we were doing the interviews, sometimes I'd be formulating a question. She's like, well, you have this question on your mind. Why don't I just answer it? I'm like, okay, that's cool. And that happened a few times. And I've seen some other psychic instances where a number of times that's come up where I'm like, wow, okay, her psychic abilities are on mark. It's little things like that start to add up. It's really cool. So it's hard for me to say what's the most impactful, but probably this onboard experience was, I'm not sure that's directly her doing so much, but I believe it is that she's requested that I could, because she wanted to take me on board so bad, and I'm living in LA. It's just not feasible. And they said, well, we'll arrange it when we can. And they did on my birthday. Best birthday present I ever got.
So how many years ago was that? Was that like this year, the year before that?
Yeah, the year before that, 2020, I think it was.
2020.
Could be 2021.
And has that happened again since? Or have you got memory of that happening again since?
No, I have that was it. There may have been another time, but I didn't wake up.
Yeah. Might have happened again, but you don't have memory of it. So when you were on board the ship and you were talking to the really tall greys, what did they share with you about themselves and their part with the evolution of humanity? Did you ask questions? Because I know you're a great interviewer like me, full of questions.
I would have if I had the time.
Right.
It ended up being a 5 to 10 minute experience.
Okay.
So after seeing these other grays on the other side of the room and going, oh my gosh, they're definitely alien. I saw this young Asian woman I'm thinking she's Korean. I don't know. I worked with this lady who's Korean. She looked just like this lady at work. And so I walked up to her because she's fully conscious. She's smiling. She's having the life, a great time. And she's looking out the window. So I walk up and I stand next to her and I'm about to talk to her when she screams out, "Woo!" Because I'm looking out the window and the craft is dropping down to earth. And I have to tell you, from, 50 miles up to right there on the surface of the planet in 1 second is a shock. So I can see why she went, "Woo!" And I just held on to this little railing that they had there. And we were right above the ground, 5 or 10 feet.
Wow.
And it was so cool, Karen, because the whole ship rocked slightly. And that I could feel. You don't feel it coming up and down in terms of, G-force.
Yeah.
It's slightly less gravity. You're kind of swimming around up there. It's really cool. But then we came down and it rocked. I'm like, whoa, this is, if you've ever been on a small boat in a gentle swell, it was very much like that. It's so cool.
So when it's hurtling through space at speed that we can't fathom, you're not feeling anything. Nope. But then when it's just like hovering above the ground and it's rocking, you feel it like a boat. Yeah, it's amazing. How do they do that?
Like I could jump up and down and I could make it rock. I didn't.
Wow.
I kind of thought about it though, but I didn't do it. And the next thing I know, we're going right back up. Boom. And that's when I turned around and I walked back to Mama. And I was going to ask questions, but she had this cup in her hand, a little glass tumbler, yay big, half the size of a normal tall milk glass, and very thick in terms of, the structure of this glass tumbler. And it was filled about a third of the way with this light green liquid. She handed it to me and told me to drink it. So I looked at it, I sniffed it, nothing. Took a nice big sip of it, and it was very thick. It was very cough syrupy thick, but very subtle flavor of lime and kiwi is how I'll put it. It's not quite accurate, but very subtle flavor that was pleasant. And she took the cup from me, and I'm like, "Hey, you just gave that to me. That's my drink. I want another sip." And she kind of went, "What? Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'd like to, have another sip, if I may." And she's like, "Yeah, that's fine if you want." But it seemed really surprised by my request. And because I wanted to really memorize the taste of it and the texture. And I did. I took another sip. And that was all I remember. I basically woke up in bed.
Wow. So what was the drink for? Was it there a purpose to the drink, or was it just to quench your thirst?
Yeah, I had to ask Dolly that. I did a whole study on alien drinks, ET drinks, because this is an experience quite a few people have. And I've read about it. It was so cool to have that experience. And I asked Dolly, she's like, "Oh, well, actually, when you're on a craft, you're out in space, you're receiving loads of gamma radiation. And this is a problem. This is why the Greys don't have hair. A lot of them, at least. And this is basically a mixture which helps your body to deal with the gamma radiation to heal you from it."
Interesting.
So that's what Dolly told me, which actually was in line with what I'd heard from a few other people.
So, getting back to the book Symmetry, what other stories can you share that Dolly shares in the book?
There's one really cool one, which I don't often get time to, because I was doing this study. Betty Andreasen, you may have heard of her. She's a very well-known contactee. Had an experience where she was with the Greys, and they had a man, and they took this man and they shined this beam of light on him and shrunk him down to about the size of 2 feet and put him in this tiny UFO, and off he went. So Betty turns to the guy, her main contact, Quasga, and says, "What was that?" They said, "Oh, well, we call that deopulating. We can do this." That's not a word. I looked it up. But I started finding other cases of contactees who've had this experience.
So Honey, I Shrank the Kids is true.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Like there's a whole movie made about that. They shrink humanity and they have all these little miniature cities. And you're saying that this is possible. This is true.
I thought it was science fiction, but Betty and Grace is describing this. The Twiggses from Malala, Oregon, they'd go on board the craft, and sometimes they'd be shorter than they normally were. I did a whole study of this in one of my Not From Here books. Had a guy call me up. He's like, "So glad I read this chapter. I'm so glad because I came back from he's changed height a couple of times, coming back, and he's shorter or taller than he normally is." So at any rate, I'm like talking to Dolly one day, and I thought of this because she's had so many experiences. Whenever I read about something, I'm like, I wonder if she's had this. She's like, well, no, I haven't, but I was on board once when they brought this guy on board. And she has some free time. And so she's always curious and is following to see what they're going to do. And they take him to this room and they told her, you can't go in, but you can watch. And they put him into this small room and sent down this beam of light. And mind you, this guy is like 6 feet tall. He starts shrinking and it takes a while. I think she said it was about half an hour or an hour. And he's feeling a little uncomfortable at times, but is fine. Shrinks him down to like 2 feet tall. And then they wheel him out to do whatever it is they're going to do. And so she's freaking out. She's like, what the heck? Explain this to me, please. She says, can you do that to me? I'd like to try that. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that to you. She says, well, what did you do that for? And they said, well, it's not important that you know. But what we can tell you is that there's a macro universe and a micro universe. You didn't think everything is the same size, did you? So that speaks to other dimensions. We have up, we have down, we have sideways, but we have inward and outward in a way that's very hard for people to conceive. But that's basically what they were doing.
What I'm thinking of, Preston? I'm thinking of Alice in Wonderland. She eats a cookie or something, drinks something, and she shrinks and she grows. It's depicted there. And also in Men in Black, there's a scene where he goes and opens a what do you call
locker?
it?
Yeah.
Locker. Yeah. And there's a whole sort of like tiny ETs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And it really makes you think. There's still a lot out there we don't understand. There's a movie with Matt Damon, Downsizing.
Yes, that's the movie, Downsizing. That's the one. Yeah, that I was thinking of. Yeah, apart from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Makes me wonder if some of these people have had experiences.
Absolutely. I think of what we call imagination is just people tapping into, if you create your own reality, anything that you can think can become possible, because we're genius creators, master creators, then all that we can imagine is somebody's truth somewhere in the cosmos, in the greater scheme of things. When you learn in the universe, when you learn about spiritual principles and they say that time and space is an illusion that we get to experience in our linear human form, and in truth it doesn't really exist, except that it's a setup for us to have this physical experience. But time and space is it's different in different dimensions, and an illusion of the third dimension. Then you can play with time and space, even here. I have a TARDIS. I have a car that is a small car, but when you get inside, it's really spacious. I call it the TARDIS. Because it has the illusion of a small car, but when you get in, it's really spacious. It's like, oh, yeah.
Yep, Talata is like that. She describes that as well. Oh, yeah. He has, he can have the ability to shrink down to smaller and larger to a certain extent. But when you're inside, it's a different deal. They have a control over time and space in ways that we don't fully understand. And this is demonstrated in a lot of, maybe that's not the right word, but it's absolutely apparent in quite a few cases. In fact, there's a case from Leonard Stringfield, real quick, the crash retrieval guy, involving a gentleman who was taken to photograph a craft. And he photographed, he said it was probably 40 feet wide. And he was a photographer. Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, we want you to photograph the inside. and he stepped inside, and he said you could not have thrown a stone and hit the other side. It was as big as a gymnasium. He actually went out and looked at it again to make sure he wasn't losing his mind.
The TARDIS.
No, it was an absolute TARDIS. Yep.
Fantastic. Oh my God. I tell you what, talking about time and space being illusion, every time I'm with you, Preston, and Dolly, actually, time just goes so quickly. Like, I'm so engaged in everything that you say, and just time disappears. It's like, I think, God, we've got an hour and a half to yak and say lots of things, and then bang, it's gone as quickly as we started. We've got about 15 minutes left, and this show is all about Dolly today. Dolly was due to come on the show, but she's not feeling well, so Preston has kindly stepped in, and I love them both so much and could talk to them all day. But yeah, I wanted to make this show about Dolly from Preston's perspective, because you are writing the second book, which is the follow-up to Symmetry, which is the book that you wrote about Dolly initially. I'm going to go back here and pop this up. What's the second book called, Preston?
We do have a working title. We're not releasing it yet because titles are a big deal. It's funny, whenever I put out a book, I'm like, okay, I need to punch this title in on Amazon and see if it's taken. And it almost always is. This one is not, and it won't be. And we're not quite ready to release it in terms of the title, but we got a good one. And actually, it's provided by Talata. Because I don't know what to call it. Titles are hard. And Dolly says, no, actually, he has a title in mind. I'm like, I would love to know what it is, because we're about ready to write this book, and it helps. It's a cool title, and it's really impactful, I think, in terms of Dolly's experiences, and encapsulates them in a very, really interesting way.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. Yeah, the second book is going to be great. We're talking about some USO encounters she's had.
Cool.
Some really interesting, fun adventures she's had. Like, one guy was driving down the highway, and she decided to pull a Close Encounters of the Third Kind scene on him, where she comes down and basically comes down right behind him and mimics a car coming at him. Poor guy scared the living daylights out of him, and Talata's like, really, this is not fun and games. And she's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. She's the pilot. She has a certain amount of freedom to do what she wants to do. Another really interesting story where they came down and accidentally injured an elk. Now, yeah, and this is not good news. It's their basically goal to preserve the environment and help. So when this elk came running into the field where the craft was and got injured, they took him on board and healed him and let him go, and kept coming back. It's a really poignant story of how Talata developed this relationship with an elk. Another really cool little story is Dolly visiting Ayers Rock in Australia.
Really? What, physically or in her astral form?
Physically, no.
In the craft. Oh, she was in the craft.
Yeah.
And she flew over Ayers Rock when she was piloting Talata.
Yeah.
And she was flying the craft.
Came down. Actually came down.
She came down. And what happened? I'm dying to know.
I don't remember the full story. There's so much, but they landed, and it was a very cool story. I can tell you that.
Well, we'll have to get Dolly back on the show another time when she's feeling better. Nicole says here, and this is a sentiment from many people online, please send my love to Dolly and hope she's feeling well. She is feeling well, not even better, well. Yes, Dolly, get well very soon. We're all going to see you thriving in that physical body, because I know that she's put that physical vehicle that she's wearing here on earth through hell. She's been through so many things. She was telling me the other day online, she's showing me scars on her neck. Oh, this happened there and this happened there. And she was telling me the
struck by lightning once.
Struck by lightning. Oh, my God.
She was bit by a rattlesnake as a young girl. She survived that.
I know. She's really put that body through.
She's a go-getter. I mean, if she wants to do something, she goes out and does it. And so what if you break a bone or two?
Yeah.
Nearly bit by a shark. This woman has lived.
Well, yeah, my daughter has been bitten by a shark. That's another story. But I mean, I guess she knows that as much as she's, you know, you've got to look after this vehicle, this spaceship that we're driving called the physical body. It's not really who you are. You know, she's had that direct experience. Most of us humans think, I am this body, this is me, this is my identity, but understanding that this is just the vehicle I'm driving while I'm having a human experience, it's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it, Preston? Yeah, you become less attached. Yeah. Yeah.
It's important to respect the body and treat it right, but ultimately it's not who we are.
So any last thing you'd like to say about Dolly? We've got 10 minutes left before we go. And I'm going to pop this up because this is on my website, but this is just some of your books, some of the books that I've popped on my website there that you how many books have you got now? 32?
32, yep.
Yeah, this is like just a few of them. I think this is on my website. What do we have here? Not From Here. Is that the last one that you put out?
I believe so, yeah. Not From Here, Volume 5.
Volume 5, yeah, that's that one. With
I did put out a science fiction story collection, actually, after that, but that's the last UFO book. And
Humanoids, High Strangeness, and of course we had Symmetry. Yeah, but what would you leave us with about Dolly before we go?
After Symmetry, at some point I'm still kind of trying to cajole her into this. I want to write a book about her out-of-body experiences because they are amazing, off the charts, incredible. But we're diving into all kinds of subjects in, you know, the sequel to Symmetry, like how once she was taken physically into the 5th dimension. And that is quite an unusual experience. Very cool. We're really going to focus a lot on the wisdom taught to her by the ETs. On basically, you know, what various dimensions are. And like I already mentioned, how to develop psychic abilities, some of the basic science, what we have right, what we have wrong, what terminology is used incorrectly, and what is the right way to look at, you know, like dimensions and source and things like this that are real popular now, but not quite how the ETs believe, or well, I won't say know it to be true. We've got some real misconceptions that we're hoping to, you know, dive into about these sort of subjects, because she was taught by the ETs. These guys are advanced, and so it's going to be a real treat to, you know, get the ET perspective on some of the subjects that are now so popular.
Yeah. This is something I wanted to quiz her about because I saw you guys on another show. I give a plug out to that other show that you've just been on recently with that lovely lady whose name I can't remember. Whose show was that? Blonde lady, short blonde hair.
Oh, Kimberly Montgomery.
Anyway, I'll check her out. But yeah, so Preston and Dolly, and Dolly was talking about when she was taken to another planet, or she was being taught in the trees or something. And anyway, it was very fascinating. So go and check that out. Dolly talking about being taught all these things. Yeah.
She was taught psychic abilities, ethics, morality, chemistry, biology, astronomy, sociology, art. I mean, you name it. The periodic table, which is more complete than we know. We don't have all the elements there on quite yet. We've got some missing holes.
Absolutely.
So very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the most important thing as humans we need to remember to recognize as who we are as an extension of source energy, infinite intelligence, pure creative potential, unconditional love, and stop fighting with each other. Even if we don't, you know, we can have our opinions, we can have our experiences, we can have our truths, and we can disagree with each other, but it doesn't mean we have to fight with each other, hold resentments, criticize others, make other people wrong. And, you know, there is a force and energy that is perpetuating the divisiveness in humanity through our media system, through our political systems, through our educational systems, through every system, really. But as conscious, evolving beings, we're here to love each other, to feel unified, and to remember who we are as an extension of the source, and not our human ego or our opinions even, or we're not our mind, we're not our body, we're not our personalities. We are love, we are grace, we are infinite creative potential.
Well, your title of the show says it all. Awakening Consciousness.
Awakening consciousness. Accentuate the positive. Well, it's that when you return to love, that's when your consciousness awakens. Because that, for me, that was my experience. I had to, forgive my father and forgive my mother for dying, and, forgive my past for the trauma that I went through, and forgive all the ex-husbands and ex-boyfriends, and, reconnect to that love and understanding of who I am. And in so doing, then I started meditating. Things started happening, like expansion and psychic ability coming back on tap. And there's still lots of things that I can't do that I still want to do. That's why I find it so fascinating talking to both you and Dolly, who have these experiences beyond my experiences. And I'm like, yes, can't wait to do that. There's just so much fun we can have as humans in this physical world. We don't have to die to have all these amazing experiences. We can have them while we're here embodied, right?
Yeah, meditation is key, allowing love and truth to guide you. I think, just being around Dolly elevates my consciousness. It's fun. One of the ways you really want to evolve and progress, one of the things you need to do is start choosing your company. Don't hang around people who are negative. You need to be very careful what you expose yourself to in terms of the media and all this, food as well. Your environment matters, but people around you have a huge effect on how you perceive the world and how you behave. And so that's been one of the real blessings for me is just, being in her presence alone it's wonderful. It's awesome.
I'm going to share this because I found this lovely lady. Share the screen. I'm just going to shout out to this lovely Journey to a New Earth, she's called. Here we go.
That's right.
There she is. And there's Preston and Dolly sharing your experiences on Journey to a New Earth. What's her name? She's a lovely lady. She's got a podcast show. So,
oh gosh, Carolyn, was it?
So yeah, there's Dolly. I am an ET alien, and there's you, Preston. Yeah. So if you want to go and check out, more of Preston and Dolly, you can. So on her show, we've got 3 minutes left. 2 minutes to go. Anything else you want to say? Thank you. Big love to everybody that has joined online. Sorry we didn't answer too many of your questions, but actually what I saw in the chat is you were chatting amongst each other. It was great. You were having a great time there. Thanks for a pleasant Sunday. Yeah, you're welcome. True words, Preston. Yeah, just shouting out to my community and Preston and Dolly's amazing community, online community, and everyone that's been listening on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network and the United Public Radio Network. We've been streaming on 107.7 and 105.3 FM. What would you like to say before we go, Preston?
Don't listen to our lying governments if you want the truth about the subject. Just, go to yourself, go inward, overcome fear to the best you can. Do your research, try to move beyond belief to experiential knowledge, and recognize that we are immortal beings. And like you said, love is the answer. You can walk the pathway of love, truth, and compassion. You're far ahead of most of humanity. So absolutely. I think that's what I would just tell people is, leave fear behind and walk in love. And recognize that you're immortal. Meditate.
Yeah. One of my first books is called Return to Love, and it's about people's experiences, NDE type experiences. But the second line is, you don't have to die to get there. So you can return to love while staying in the body. You don't have to have an NDE or even die to return to love. You can return to love right here and now. So if there's anyone you're fighting with or you're hating, clean that up, because then you're doing the planet a big favor when you shift your perspective and your consciousness. Big love. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm filling in for Dolly, and lots of hearts and love going out to Dolly. Get well soon. We're seeing you well and thriving, and we'll get Dolly back on the show another time. Bye. Wonderful. For now.
Bye.